Okay, next we're going to critique Nicole's portraiture project. Let's take a moment to read the introduction. An interesting idea then. Instead of actually taking a photograph of a person, this is still a portrait, but it's more of a conceptual or a symbolic portrait. I think this is a great story. That your mom made this bear out of your grandpa's shirt. That in and of itself is very, very meaningful. And so, I'm glad that you chose to capture this in uh, in this series of portraits. It's very interesting and very unexpected. Let's take a look at this one. I've got. I think this one's almost working. Let's see here. If you had to use 200, if you had to use 2500 for your shutter speed, you probably could have afforded to come down in your ISO maybe to like 400 or something like that. The background looks great on this. I love the velvety quality. I feel like the area here and here might be a little bit flat. I think maybe the shadows are still a little bit harsh. I'm not sure exactly what you had, for lighting, but like this is a really, really dark shadow right in here. Um, I also think it's the composition is interesting because you have him looking off the page, and I'm going to assume that that's intentional because he's no longer with us. Or something. It's definitely out of balance. And if that's the intent, then it's working. Because when something is out of balance, it's a little bit awkward. It puts us a little bit at unease. I think if you wanted this to be an easier picture to look at, I would have moved him over to this side and had the negative space in front of him instead of behind him. But that said, I also get the sense that he's trying to exit the picture right here, and that kind of makes sense, symbolically. It's a little flat in here. There are some shadows on some of these areas that you could probably use your burn tool to bring some of these shadows back out just a little bit so that this area seems a little bit more round, a little bit more volumetric. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay. Wow, I'm getting that moire effect. Do you guys know what I mean by the moire effect when you look at certain striped patterns through certain types of lenses? It I'm not sure how it works. I'm not sure how it works exactly. It's interesting. And I'm not sure. I guess that maybe that happened, like your lens caused that weird effect to happen, and then it just got captured on. Um, it just got captured on your sensor. I'm not really sure, but it's very, very interesting. Um, let's see a couple of things about this one. It's very, very frontal. It's just almost confrontational. It's just almost kind of mugshot confrontational. Um, I think this also is a little bit unsettling, and I'm not sure if that's the intent or not, but it seems just a little bit uneasy to look at. I think let's see a couple of things. This is a very small thing, but it's the kind of thing I always notice. I wish this ear was up a little bit more like this one because it kind of gets lost on the contour of the head here, and I think we could really use it. I also think that even though you've got a pretty good placement and everything, I'm feeling like the print on his shirt is so delicate, and it is a very cool, you know toned down blue. It's not a bright blue and it's not warm. And you've got this very large pattern, and in contrast to like a very intricate pattern here, you've got very large pattern objects here in the background, and they're warmer. And I had talked, I can't remember if I mentioned it to everyone or just mentioned it in one of the critiques, but I had talked a little bit to you guys about the push-pull theory, in that warm colors tend to push towards the viewer. Cool colors tend to recede. So when your subject is a cool color and then you've got like a really bright or warm background, and even though this isn't, bright, it's still very, very warm. You probably need to tone down the warmth a little bit. And I think it would kind of make sense to make the background a little cooler, because I think if this is about somebody, passing and moving on, I think, like a very kind of neutral background would work. But I'm not really getting the psychological connection that I am in this one. If it's like just kind of, if you just compare them, which if they were both hanging on the wall in a gallery, which one would I spend more time with? I would probably not spend a lot of time with that one. It just doesn't have that, that intrigue. That this one heightens my curiosity. This one makes me wonder what's going on. That this one makes me start putting together possible scenarios in my imagination. So, just let's try and figure out as we look at these, how these things are working or not working. Okay, so this one, and another one that's kind of frontal and getting that weird moire effect again. This one is at first I was like, oh, it's kind of frontal. It's not that interesting, but actually, um, it really does kind of look like a portrait of a person. I mean, that is pretty much the setup that you would have if you had somebody posing. I think you got in nice and close to the face, having a similar problem in that you've got this vibrant and warm kind of green in the background, and it's got a lot of yellows in it. And yellow is the color that pushes towards us the most. That's why school buses are yellow, because it jumps out at us. So you've got this kind of um, cool, kind of toned down subject that's trying to hold its own against a really vibrant background. And similarly, you've got this very, very interesting and delicate pattern happening here, but unfortunately, um, this leaf here is getting a little bit too much attention. If I don't know if that was probably you probably could have gone to a shallower depth of field, but maybe that was like the biggest you could get with your with your lens. But again, I think that the potential for psychology, for psychological, is a little bit lost, just because your subject's kind of having to fight for attention. So again, let's just go back to that first one. See how that's not happening here. Okay, your figure and their ground know their place. Here the figure's losing itself against the ground a little bit, and here it's not losing itself against the background, but it's competing. It's competing with the background. So, just kind of keep that in mind when you have strong patterns, large objects, bright colors in your background. Those are going to be a challenge. It doesn't mean you can't have the warm background and the cool foreground. It just means that you're going to have to, find a way to downplay this, and get this pattern to jump towards us just a little bit more. I don't know if it would be appropriate for you, but it's, compositionally, there is a little bit of yellow in this. And, I think if these yellows were a little brighter, a little bit more saturated, that would help push him forward and separate him from the background. Um, but I don't know if that would be acceptable to you because you may want to be like very true to the actual color of the shirt. Okay, let's see. This one's a little scary. It doesn't have that endearing quality that the others have, and I think it's why is that? Why is that? Let's see. Um, I think that it's the lighting. Whoops. I think that it's the lighting part of it. There's something kind of um, a little dangerous looking about this. I don't know exactly what it is, but my first thought was that's somebody lurking in my home, and there's what's the word I'm looking for? There's an ominous quality to it. That's what I'm looking for, and I think it just has to do with the proximity that you are to the subject. I wish you wouldn't have cut off his chin like that. You could get back just a little bit and include the collar. Uh, and I think it's probably confrontational just because you're so close. The face is kind of flattened out right here. I don't get the sense that there's a snout coming towards me, which I know is there. I can see it right there. I can even see it in these two, but in this one, this area is just kind of completely flattened, and therefore it starts to look a little bit more like a scary mouse or something. But I think that's another thing that's interesting to do. I don't think that that would be your objective, but to take something and try to set the lighting up so that it does evoke, that kind of ominous quality. Um, so, you could very easily have come down. Uh, or no, I need to go up. I'm sorry, on your ISO. I don't know if you were using your tripod or not. I'm having a hard time finding an area that's in really sharp focus. Even though this is not a living person or whatever, it's still a portrait. And the same principle applies that if there's only one part of the face that's in focus, it needs to be the eyes. And I think it's a little soft on both of the eyes. This side of the face is much more interesting to me than this side of the face. And perhaps, um, I don't know. I think maybe if you moved yourself to the side and got this as a little bit more from a 3/4 angle instead of frontal, it might have given us a lot more information. We would have had a little bit better sense of the shape of the face, and been able to see a little, because these shadows in here are really cool. They're nice and soft, and they're really doing a good job of rounding out this area here. And we're just kind of losing that where this very direct light is on it right here. That kind of stuff is a little tricky. Um, okay, so let me go on to the next one. Okay, now this one is significantly better than the other one in front of the same wall. Let me go back and let's see why. Okay, first of all, frontal and centered is never going to be as interesting as a side or a 3/4 view. And also, I'm not sure why, but I'm not having that issue with the bear not holding its own against that background. Why is that? Well, I think it's because you're closer. And therefore, this pattern becomes bigger. See how when you get close like this, we don't have that moire effect. We can actually see the pattern, and the pattern is really important in this, really, really important. And so notice that your background is a lot more out of focus. I think perhaps the figure is a little bit farther away, allowing you to have that shallow depth of field. And this one I'd say is a pretty good composition. You know, again, I don't see any good reason to cut off the little part of the collar right here. I think that that would just kind of make it, you know, feel a little bit more attached to something. But you know, this one almost has a sense that since you're not facing it straight on, it's kind of looking off to the side. Um, there's something going on, just like with the first one. You know, this one is also not frontal, and when you look at him from the side, he seems unaware of our presence and he's doing something, you know. In these, he's like very, very aware, you know, that we're here taking his picture. And so, you know, I like the, you know, kind of more spontaneous, candid quality. Your blues are actually working against the warmer wall that way. I mean, you still could bring up the saturation on the bear just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit if you wanted to. But I think because you've got this really nice pattern and you're in nice and close, and you've got a nice clean line, you know, all the way around the form, that it's you're not having that same problem. Okay, so this one turned out really nice. Okay, and then finally, another. This one's kind of. I mean, it could be kind of funny. I mean, to me, this one looks a little bit like a mugshot. It's kind of well, it's not really that similar. It's not scary like this one is. Um, it's probably just, I would say, you know, the lighting's good and everything, but it's not intriguing me like this one is. You know, so I guess what I wish you would have done is more, not just frontal, you know, more kind of three-quarter or profile view. You've got three, like, you know, very, very frontal, and four, if you can count this one as just almost super frontal, and none of them are as interesting as the two where you're kind of more from the side. You know, this one does very much have that kind of mugshot look, which is like we're trying to capture your features and nothing more. You know, we're trying to catch what you look like, but beyond that, personality, context, you know, all of that stuff is unimportant. And so, you know, it looks like a passport photo, maybe, you know, a driver's license photo, mugshot, that kind of thing. And so the narrative isn't quite coming through on this one. So, you know, I think that your story is wonderful. And I think it's a great idea. Um, as far as like conveying mood, um, I'm not sure that these actually say everything that you would like for them to say. I consider this like kind of the getting a start. And if you wanted to, you know, really get a nice, you know, portrait series of this, maybe try to think about some other scenarios. You know, since you've got a bear standing in for a person, um, you know, maybe you could place some objects behind him or around him, you know, some things that tell us a little bit more about your grandpa. Maybe place it in a piece of his furniture, or, you know, arrange some of his possessions, you know, to be part of it, so that I think so that that sentimentality comes across a little bit more. So those are kind of my observations on this one. Let's go ahead and take a look at your conclusion.